Welcome to season 2 of the All Things Are podcast. We are back to remote recordings for a while, but that's not going to stop us from having some incredible guests on. Today, I'm joined by Henri Ghijben. Henri lost his business, his home, and nearly his family due to events in 2019. Now, Henri is the founder of the Fail Forward podcast, where he shares his passion and talks openly about his own personal failure while helping to educate others. Henri, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tom. It's good to be here.
For people who've not come across you like myself, I've joined you on Facebook because one of my friends said you need to go and check this guy out. He's doing something completely different. And also, I finally super excited to say you've got a podcast as well, which is doing something a little bit similar to me. And I think you're the only other person in the industry who's got like a podcast actually going, which is absolutely fantastic. For people who haven't come across you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, yeah, thanks for being here, Tom. And it's great to have a podcast like yours in the industry doing things and for the ARB industry. So I run the Fail Forward podcast. Where it all started for me is I left school, failed all my GCSEs, as a lot of people do. I think find themselves in the ARB industry. We're not academic. Bumbled around jobs, did lots of different office jobs, and then forever stared out of a window thinking, I don't want to be in this suit, I don't want to be in this job, this is really boring. So I tried being a carpenter, and the carpenter that I spent about 6 weeks with said, no, you've not got attention to detail. So the next thing after that is being a tree surgeon. And fortunately, my mate said to me, my company are looking for some guys to take on, and I trained up from there. And then went and worked for lots of different companies, mainly around Southampton, but we went and worked for City Suburban in London for 6 months, which to do the street trees. And then in 2008, when the recession hit,
Yeah.
the company I was working for went under. Funny enough, after the story I've got, I then got the opportunity to start my own business. And then grew a business from 2008, and then that's really where the fun started to happen.
Yeah. It's weird. You started your business 2008. I started mine in 2009, and I look back thinking, "Oh, you started that in the middle of a recession. Like, who in the right mind would invest all of this money into this kid, and then it paid off somehow?"
Yeah,
But
well,
it's
I was very naive at that point. You don't really. I was
yeah.
24 years old, and I think sometimes when you're naive, it's better because if you knew everything you knew now, you probably do things slightly
Oh
differently. But
God, yeah. Well, you can very much relate to that, and I can relate to that because I used to. Everyone's heard this story. My first ever job was 5 ash trees, 25% reduction. Took me 5 days to do the job. Me and a groundsman only charged 250 quid.
mm,
So it goes again like no one teaches you when you come out of college this is how much you need to charge and this is how you actually do the job. It's a case of this is how you use a chainsaw, this is how you don't kill yourself, and then you learn
yeah,
the rest of it. So
yeah, it's a very valid point you got there because at college you learn about how to cut trees, the
yeah,
science of trees, but they don't teach you the business part of it, which is a very valid point.
valid points. That's an understate. Can't get my words out today. Understate. It's been a while since I've had to do a remote record, and I usually get to sit in front of the guests, but due to all sorts going on, I'm now sat back behind the desk. But that is a big thing, and it's one of the reasons I started this podcast is who teaches you to run a business, like any business. Who taught that first person to teach the second person to teach the third person to come all the way down to the food chain to teach us to.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. There it is definitely lacking, and it's one of the things that I had that was lacking because when I failed all my GCSEs, I closed that book of learning,
Yeah,
and my dad taught me, Henry, you've got to work really hard. What you put into life, you get back. Which is a great ethos. I mean, it was great ethos because we've got to work hard. But when you're running a big business,
mm,
working hard just doesn't cut it. You need to be backed up with learning and understanding all the intricate parts of business.
no. So no one ever taught me about HR. No one ever taught me about accounting. Like it's really similar because it's one of the questions I've got later on, but I'm going to ask it now. Do you ever see a connection between people who have failed in secondary school or have come out with like very little grades, who have gone on to be quite successful, compared to people who have got A stars, gone on to university, and then at the end of it have got nothing to show with it.
Yeah, well, definitely, because I think when you're failing from an early age, you're learning more, and I think it can also make you more determined, especially if you've got a competitive mindset, which I definitely have.
Mm.
You know, I wanted to win at everything all the time, and when you fail and lose, it makes your drive hungrier and more determined. And certainly, I was reading a book recently, and they were talking about it's a major problem in young girls who are A-star students,
Yeah,
especially who go through school. And I've got a 6-year-old daughter, and at the moment she's flying. She's already doing year two stuff, and she's in year one, and she's very academic at her age already. And my concern is that she's going to go through life like there's some issues that have been not just girls but boys as well, but
yeah,
mainly girls who are very academic, and they go through life always top sets, top grades, as you say, school, college, university. Then they leave, and they've done is essentially win through their school life because they've just gone bounce, 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 you know, A star, A star, A
yes,
star, and that's not life, is it? Life is it's the school of hard knocks. It's
yeah,
about experience and learning, and then you sort of go out into the real world and you don't get your first job, or your second job, or your third job, and you've not done anything to learn that, yeah, shit gets real, and you know it's tough. So looking back at it, I think some of the most famous people like Richard Branson, Alan Sugar, and all those people, they've had either were not academic and they've had failed
yeah.
businesses, and it's just drove them further forward.
When did you have your like first failure?
So my first failure was when my mum, she read a book by Richard Branson, actually teaching parents how to bring up entrepreneurial children. So I think I was about 7 years old, 8 years old at primary school, and I grew up in a little village in Suffolk, in Bury St Edmunds, and my mum dropped me halfway to school down this cut through. Which had to walk through a couple of fields and then through a graveyard and church. They showed me the weekend before,
Yeah,
um, then dropped me off on the Monday at this cut through where there's no roads, but it was a cut through. But I mean, I'm really young. I mean, don't think you do that this sort of this era that we're in
yeah,
now. And I got lost. And I came back out because went halfway down. My older sister who told me the story about the haunted graveyard, and I got lost and then panicked and then walked back out onto the road. Walked down to the road to walk to school and fell in a ditch, and a mum pulled me out of this
oh
ditch.
mate,
And yeah, I was so young. I remember it as well. And the teacher was fuming with my parents, you know,
yeah,
if they hadn't let them know. But I suppose that was my first major failure that I remember. But after that, my wife now says if there wasn't Tom Toms, you'd be a millionaire because you'd be able to tell everyone where to go because I never get lost. I think that failure at that point, after that, I just don't get lost. Like if I go somewhere once, I'll remember it. Like I'll be
yeah,
driving through somewhere and go, "Oh, do you remember we were here like 5 years ago?" To my wife, and she's like, "How do you remember that?" It's because I think it built my awareness up. So I didn't know what at that point I was failing. It was just like this traumatic thing that happens as a kid.
yeah.
But I think that was probably the first time that I failed. But now I didn't realise until recently, and I look back at it and went, okay, that's why I now never get lost because I had this moment where things didn't go quite right, and then yeah,
It's interesting that because I've seen people who have gone through that path of success in schools, and then they've had their first failure, and then that's been it. And I've seen people who've really gone off the boat routine to drugs and alcohol. Of like what me and you would look at and go, well, that was a bad day in the office, but this person's thinking, oh, I've lost my job, I'm never going to be able to get employed again, I'm going to be on benefits, and how do you try and help someone process that to say, look, it'll pass eventually, it's just a glitch, everyone has them, you've not had yours until your early 20s, but you will get through this.
well, it's tough, isn't it? Because you don't want to wrap your children in cotton wool too much, and that's the thing. It's trying to let them be free enough to
Yeah,
make the decisions and build up the cognitive behaviours. You know, and I think without going down a rabbit hole about other things, but you know, we've got so much stuff now with digital screens, everything, and you know, but certainly growing up in the 80s and 90s for me, you know, there wasn't screens. We just had to go out and like play in the woods and like fall over and fall off your bike and you know, meet people and have difficult, awkward conversations because you're young and you don't know what you're talking about, and you know, all those kind of things that build up your personality. And quite often now we're wrapping kids in cotton wool because of the way we feel about the media and everything that's told to us about how bad the world is.
Yeah, don't get me
You
started
know,
on the media. But like,
but
like I've got two kids as well, and my little lad fell off his scooter, come in, bawling his eyes out, and I love him, but I looked at him and went, "Well, what do you want me to do about it? The smallest graze on his hand," and it's like, okay. And then his mum comes in and picking her up, cuddling her, saying everything's going to be all right, and I'm standing there going, "Just time to get back out on the scooter. He'll be fine in five
yeah,
minutes."
yeah, and he'll learn not to do that again, right?
Yeah, well, everyone you learn it. If your mum says it's hot and you touch it and it burns your hand, you'd never go and do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd never go and do it again. So you've worked for another company. That company's gone bust. You started up on your own. What was it like in the early days?
So yeah, it was. I was very fortunate. The company that went under, I've always been someone that wants to tells the world what I want to do, where I want to go, whether it's in a job, whether it's business, whatever. And I've been telling everybody for about a year I want to start my own tree surgery business. And the company that went under, we were working for an older chap who he just got work. He'd been in the industry for decades, and he'd got work, and he just subbed it out. And we were subbing for this company to him. And I'd had a chat with him one day and said, John, I'm going to go and start my own business one day. And randomly, I had a summer. There wasn't much work around. It was the first time I'd ever been really unemployed for a long amount of time. It was a couple of months after the business went under, and I was trying to find work everywhere. And then, out of the blue, John phoned me up and said, "Henry, remember you told me that time that you want to start your own business? Well, do you want to come and meet me in a pub?" And we met in the Checkers pub in Four Marks. And he said, "Look, you need to start your own business." But I can sub you work, and I think it was 350 or 450 a day at that point for a two-man team. He was charging us, which was okay money back then.
Yeah.
And he said, "I can give you some work, but you need to buy your own van and chipper and set your business up." And at the time, my credit rating was absolutely shot to pieces from a previous bad credit card I had, as we all seem to do at that age. I was 24, and
Yeah.
I said I can't get a loan, and he actually went and got the loan, and we paid him back monthly for this.
Wow.
We got a TP 150 chipper for £5,000, and the transit van for I think 7 or 8 grand or something. And I had a few tools that I'd sort of accumulated over the years. And then we started working, but we had about 3 months' work with John. And what we had to do is work predominantly for him, and then any other work we got, we either had to do when we're not working for him or weekends. And I was just pricing whenever I can. And we did about 3 months' work up, and this was September 2008 up until Christmas. And then suddenly the recession really hit. Northern Rock had gone under, and January came, and I remember it just being really scarce with work. And that year we were doing, some weeks we were doing a day's work, then others we had a week's work, and it was really up and down. But I was so fortunate at that time that my wife was earning, I don't know, 12 grand a year working for a bank, and we lived in a bedsit which was 80 quid a week, all bills included. So it was 40 quid each a month, and I had
That's not bad.
a single garage out the back of my house for £57 a month. And I kept all my tools in it, van
Yeah.
reversed right up to it. Chipper got under, we're taking the spout off, and it was okay because we didn't really need much money in life at that point. We're still quite young, didn't have many bills, so we just sort of scraped about for a year or two and just got by and just made enough to live and have a bit of fun still and go to the pub at weekends and things like that. So yeah, that's sort of the early year or two.
What do you think of these lads who are coming out of college at the moment who are thinking, "Oh, these finance deals are too good to miss," and they're going out and they're buying the latest Timberwolf chipper or Force chipper, they're getting a Isuzu van or a Transit, and then they have what you experienced: loads of work, and then it goes quiet.
Yeah, well, it's that must be tough because at first you're just trying to build reputation, understanding where you want to be in the market, and it's just not only that, it's the experience. Like we've all done it, and I think anyone listening to this podcast has got a business. When they first started, you go out and price a conifer. It always seemed to be conifer jobs that were the worst ones. You go,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, there's a couple of days on that," and then a week later you're still like buried in conifer, like
Yeah.
thinking, "I wish I had a better chipper. I wish I had put more money on this. Why am I in the middle of this?" And there's a lot of experience to be had in, especially if you've, I'd been doing it 3 years up until that point, and I still learned loads and had some like moments where I'm like, I'm just, I've got 3 years experience and I'm still not understanding it all, and it must be tough to go straight from college, get financed up to the max, and then have the quiet times. That's going to put a lot of stress and strain on your business. So yeah, it's. I don't think some people used to say you had to do 2 years on the ground before you could even climb. I did 6 months, and I don't quite believe that, but I certainly would say going straight from college to go and start your own business, I think you'd need to get a couple of years experience first before you go and do that, in my opinion.
Yep, I didn't do that. I went straight to college, got me basic, I mean like CS 30, 31, 38, 39, and then went, right, Jack in college in, gotta go start my own business. Thankfully, I managed to pull it off because I didn't finance anything. I was driving around in a Volvo, I think it was a V70 Estate, with some unbranded trailer that I could maybe get 200 kilos of chipping at a push. I had a 171 chainsaw that did absolutely everything, and I had a £500 loan slash purchase from my dad who got me a climbing kit. And I'd never tell anyone to do it. It was stressful, but it was quite similar to you as well. I was living with Grantham at the time. My rent was about 280 a month, and that was because it was a 1 bed flat. That I had to take everything back to my mother-in-law's house every single night, cram it in her garage, and I'd be there some mornings at 6:30 in the morning, getting the chipper out, getting everything counted, absolutely screaming at me, going, every morning you're waking us up, and then we'd be back at 9, 10 o'clock at night, because I would have tried to cram 6, 7 jobs in just to basically break even every day. Yeah, if you're in college and you're listening to the podcast, stay in college, get your qualifications, and then please to God just go work for someone else for a couple of years. It's so much easier instead of thinking you can risk everything on the line. Because if it doesn't work, yes, you can sell all the equipment and you can go somewhere else, but it's that aspect of the failure that will stay with you for a very, very long time, and you'll kick yourself with it. Did you, apart from doing those couple of months with John, did you have anyone else who was giving you advice at the time, say this is what you need to do, this is how you price jobs up, this is how you find people to come and work for you?
Not really. I just want to go back to a quick point at the last, and I'll answer that in a second. But I had the best bit of advice I ever had was from one of my managers when I worked for Chris Orr, and that was Mark Hines, who now runs our pro.
Oh yes.
He said to me, Henry, to become a really good tree surgeon, you need to work for a few different firms. Not loads, because you don't want that on your CV, but you need to work for a few different. And that's why I went up to London and worked for a couple of different firms to understand how, because each firm's different. I mean, all tree surgery businesses are pretty chaotic, but each firm runs different ways, has different clients, different sectors, different niches, and it's really important to learn that. So I think there's some real, you don't need to be doing it for tens of years to start your own business, but certainly working for a couple of different firms first before you go and start your own business is a pretty good thing to do. But going back to your point, Tom, the only mentor I really had was my dad. And my dad had run one-man bands, and he sort of gave me advice. But then when it's from a relation, there's a lot of emotion in there, so sometimes the advice can be taken in the wrong way. Certainly, me as a son, me and my dad always had difficult conversations. So he'd tell me a bit, but I was very much, Dad, I'm going to do this. I'll sort this out myself. Very probably ignorant to myself, and it was just going out and pricing. I kind of knew roughly what the market was doing, and I knew what I was charging John, and I always wanted to try and get a bit more than what I charged John when it was my own jobs. But apart from that, it was just kind of making it up as I go along, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's what we all do. Did you never get the memo? Never work with friends or family? Because I did that as well. I hired friends, and those relationships no longer exist because they can never go. Like, you're my friend down the pub, but on a Monday morning, you're my boss all of a sudden, and I can't swear at you as much anymore, and I've got to have like a lot more respect. This isn't working. I'd rather see you down at the pub.
I had that exact thing at first. I employed a lot of friends because I just wanted to have this business where I knew everybody and we were all friends, and I thought this is going to be great. But then actually, the flip side of it is that a lot of mates see you go, down the pub, Henry's sound, he won't mind if I'm half hour late this morning. Henry's sound, he won't mind if I just quickly do this. Henry's sound, I might want to do this. And before you know it, people are taking, and they're not doing it viciously or in a really horrible way, but it happens, and then frustration happens. And actually, my best mate worked for me, and he was a contract. He went from groundy all the way up to contracts manager, and in the end, we had to go through a disciplinary with him. And I didn't talk to him for a year after that. He was best friends with my wife, so it was really awkward. And now we're friends again. But it took a
Yeah.
while to get that, and I've had a few different mates work for me, and it's just mixing friends with business just doesn't work. And people say, "Oh no, it worked for me. I'll be fine. We've got a strong relationship." But I've seen some of the strongest relationships fall
Yeah.
apart through business because, especially when things get tense, and things will get tense in business. Business isn't easy. I thought I'd nailed it at one point, and it was. It's not easy, but simple. But when things start going wrong, that's when the cracks start to form, and it's you need to be able to have difficult conversations with people, not shout or
Yeah.
scream, but difficult conversations. And when you try and do that with friends, those conversations are 10 times more difficult.
Yeah. My biggest gripe ever, the word mates rates.
Hmm.
Right, if I'm your friend, you know the struggles of me running a business. You know I've openly spoken to you about this person's not paying or I'm having a bad time. But I can clearly come round and do the job for you for half the price than what I normally charge. Why can't friends just like support each other? And so one of my friends is a taxi driver, absolutely fantastic guy. Every time I've got in a taxi, I've always paid him more, and he's never understood. Like the meter says a tenner, I'll give him like 15 quid, and it's a case of because I know how hard you have to work for this. He's the only person I'll ever overpay time and time after again, and he's the only guy where if I've had a problem, I can always rely on him because I've never took the piss out of him, and he's never took the piss out of me. But I've got other friends who have gone off, done work for them, and if I've needed to move house or something, oh no, I'm busy. I've got something planned that weekend, and it's like, well, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Then you quickly realise, all right, they kind of just want.
Yeah, well, they definitely do, and they always want more. Um, and you're right there. Like mates, it should just be, you know, at the same price, or if not more, not more, but the same
Yeah,
price because that's the way it is. And you're right, mates rates is a frustrating world to be in.
it is. Do you have to have a big business to be successful?
No, I think define success for me to define success. It's setting some goals in your life and reaching those goals, and that can be anything from having just a small company, but that small company means that you can take a certain amount of time off, or your
Yeah,
family. I think success is completely defined down to the individual person, and someone's idea of success can be completely different to others. And I think that's where the frustration in the world at this moment. You flick through Facebook and you see someone else who's got a new Muni mug, and you've got someone else that's got a 360 of a shear, and you've got someone else that's got all the latest kit, and it makes you feel inferior, and it can give you some really negative thoughts,
mm.
because everyone shows their best life on social media, right?
Oh yeah,
And the reason why I'm relating to this is because I think the way to filter that is to know that what your goal is, and having a goal of where you want to be, and then defining your success on your own goal, not other people's.
but why does everyone think success is having hundreds, if not millions, in the bank? Like success for me, for me right now, is series 2 of the podcast. Like we just completed series 1. That was 30 episodes. Got to travel all over the UK, something which I never thought I'd do and get paid to do. And now season 2's here. It's like, oh, yeah, that's it's those little wins. It's like when you get like a new piece of equipment and you learn how to master it. That's success. But well, I see it all the time when people first start out. They always have to try and like keep up with a business next to them. So like they've got like a new tree shear. And when I see a business with all this equipment at the moment, I'm thinking those finance payments because there's no way. Like, and there'll be a couple of tree surgeons out there that's got enough in the bank to go. Yeah, I'll go and spend 100 grand on a van, a chipper, a brand new setup. But like a lot of businesses are going right. This has to make us money. Every single day this piece of equipment goes out, it has to make us money because there's someone above me that needs to get paid at the end of every week, every month, every day. So yeah, success needs to be defined and it has to be unique to yourself. it's not just money. It's if you got that tree down. If you said 2 days to do that job, took you a day, that's success for some people.
Mm. Well, I define my success in how much time I can spend with my family, you know, and that's the key, because I've been in a place where I've had a lot of kit, a lot of staff, but I had no time, and I'd barely
Yeah,
got to see my kids, and I definitely wasn't successful. And then, like, I think for me, my definition of my own success is having businesses that work for me without me having to work in it, so
yeah.
I can spend time with family. If I want to take a couple of weeks off and everything runs smoothly, I come back and everything's just as I left it, that's success to me. Um, but that doesn't mean that's the same for somebody else. Someone else might want 100 guys. Someone else might want all the fancy kit, or someone might just want to have two guys working for them, just going out and just doing
Mm.
doing tree work every day.
Was there any like key moments that you learned in the first year running your business? Oh, I need to make notes of that for next year, or oh, this has made a big difference to how I'm going to run my business going forward.
Um, in the first year, I don't know, it was just all about survival, really. I think at
Yeah,
that point, I was so aware of my own self to be analysing what I needed to do the following year. It was just like, get by this week, get by this month, make the finance payments to John, make sure I keep up with him, and we just keep trying to get as much in the diary as possible so we can keep working. That was kind of my key aim. I'd say even for the first few years, I was 24, and it wasn't actually until I was 27 till I got married, till I actually went, okay, now I'm feeling ambitious. Now we're thinking about having a family, and I'm married, and life's getting real, and like I need to start, you know, pushing things forward. And I think that's when things started getting interesting.
so how big did HR it is HRG Tree Surgery, isn't it?
Yeah, it was the first business was HRG Tree Services.
Tree Services, sorry. I'll go back.
Yeah,
So how big did the first tree surgery business get to?
so we got to 47 staff.
Oh crikey.
Mm.
Having to pay 47 people's mortgage a month. Yeah, that's fear
It
in my
There were
eyes.
some months when we would just get to payday and we would still not have all the money, and somehow we would work magic to get people, by 4 o'clock
Yeah.
that day we'd get people paid. When it was That was when it was bad. It was really tough to try and get people paid. But one thing is that I would always make sure the staff are paid, like over
Yeah.
even myself, out of anything, any other bill being paid out of the business. The the like my whole business model was always based on a good company culture with looking after the staff, and I think in the early days that's certainly how I managed to grow, because I didn't have the business acumen, but one thing I did was look after the staff. And one thing that people don't necessarily realise is that when you look after the staff, it was all about me looking after the staff because I respected everybody, and I'd had some really shit jobs before where I'd had people shouting at me, and sales jobs with people kicking off, and I was always like, I never want to be that boss, so I always want to make sure I look
Mm,
after my staff. But what actually happened is when you look after your team, they put 130% in for you. They stay late.
they do.
They turn up on time. They do more. Like, our customer service was amazing, and we've never done any customer service training. But because I cared about them, they cared about the job and what they did. So that's how we kept getting more customers, by delivering good customer service and good quality work all the time.
It's being made to feel respected as well and wanted within the business instead of just going it's a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
I see it all the time. I've had a good couple of people who worked for me, and I've had other people who've come along and simply went, "Oh yeah, by the way, your invoice is overdue by 2 days. I'm going somewhere else." And you think, "Oh, okay, right. I don't really want you as part of my team going forward." So I completely agree with you. It makes a big difference when your team has that respect from you and vice versa.
yeah, definitely. And I think the old school way of, like, a lot of bosses used to say, "Well, I pay them. Their paycheck is their thanks."
Oh,
And you're like, no,
yeah.
that's the minimum they get for turning up and doing a good job. Like, the thanks is on a Friday afternoon. We used to buy a crate of beers every Friday once everything was packed up. Everyone have a beer. We still do it now. Everyone's got to be packed up, all kit away, and there's a crate of beers and a beer for the boys before they go home. And just saying, "Hey, guys, you paid this month. Thanks for your commitment. Thanks for your commitment you've given to the business." It doesn't have to be huge amounts, but it's sometimes it's the small things that just help show people that are appreciated, because Tree surgery. Everyone listening to this podcast knows tree surgery. Some days you're in the trenches. Some days you're doing really shit jobs. It's not all just nice pruning all the time. There are some long drags. There's some shit jobs, and when you get people showing their commitment and everyone working as a team, that needs to have some gratitude for it. As a boss or your managers running the company, you need to have gratitude for the work that the guys put in, because it's tough. It's hard work.
Yeah, the easiest way I've worked out who to find out who are committed to working with you, or who just want a paycheck, is say with Connie Bashan in the pissing down rain, first thing on a Monday morning when you had a late night on a Sunday.
Yeah.
If they turn up at 6:30 in the morning, they're either completely insane, they've not been to bed, or they actually enjoy working for you. It's the easiest way to weed people out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So my main reason for reaching out to you, I don't know how you do it, to be honest. I don't know how you can. I'm making this sound really bad, aren't I, Craig? I don't know how you can sit there and talk about this. Like, how dare you? You lost your business.
Yeah.
When did you start to notice it was going wrong, or were you just that blindsided?
So we grew the business. I got a contract with SSE, which is a utility arb, DNO, and we grew quite quickly up to about 30 staff, and then we won this amazing contract that was day rate, and we were getting paid a great day rate. We were getting paid for our van, our chipper, our mute, all the kit that we put out on site we got paid for, and it was fantastic. So we did about 18 months, I think, on that, where we were earning pretty good money. And that's when I said earlier, I thought business was simple at that point, because the rates we put on were kind of similar to the other businesses. There was about 30 contractors on that contract, and they're all about similar amount. So I knew the rates were good and business was good. Money was coming in. Looked at the bank account. There's money in the bank. Great, we're making money. And at that point, we'd done about 18 months on it, and we got a phone call saying that the SSE have spent. This was in September. SSE have spent too much, and the budget starts in April, obviously. And by September, we had a phone call saying they've already spent most of their budget. If we carry on going, the money's going to run out by Christmas. So we're completely changing the contract from this lovely day rate contract, and we're going to put everything out to price. At that point, I decided to keep all my staff on, because I, again, knew like everyone's kids' names, gerbils' names, I had this really bond. Like everyone, we didn't have a revolving door of staff, and most people had been with me for a few years, and we just built this really good team. So I didn't lay anyone off. We decided to go out and start pricing. But what happened is 30 contractors were given a very small amount of work to go and price, and everyone then was getting this Dutch auction kind of scenario where everyone was pricing down. Not only did SSE then go and employ 30 people to go out auditing us to ensure that, because the first thing when you get price work that gets cut is quality and safety. So they wanted to ensure that. So we were then getting kicked off site left, right and centre, because we didn't have a scabbard on our silky, or we didn't have, something like a tick on a method statement, these crazy things happening. Then the work wasn't getting done. Productivity was dropping. Morale was dropping. We'd priced low on some work. Well, not that low. That was ridiculous. But we'd priced what we thought was competitively to be able to crack out the spans and the work to be able to get it done. And then suddenly we're not being able to be productive. So we did that for about a year with just about breaking even and not losing a huge amount, but not making a huge amount. Then SSE completely changed the contract, and we came fifth in that contract. And this is where the mistakes really started to happen. At that point, we'd finished fifth, and we then just made the decision again not to lay the guys off, but then go and sub to the number one company. When at that point, what I should have done is laid off 80% of the firm. Started again with we're still about 35 people at this point. We should have gone down in numbers, gone back to maybe 8 or 9 people, and then rebuilt and waited for it to blow over, and either gone back onto SSE in the future or just found work elsewhere. SSE are very what's the word in the most keeping my integrity. Just take a lot of your energy. They need a lot
Yeah.
from you. So when you're working for them, they take a lot of your energy. So you can't put your energy into other things. We always try to move and build 50-50. So we were 50% utility, 50% commercial and domestic. But where they take a lot of your energy, you're in delivery mode or firefighting all the time. So anyway, at that point, we then went and subbed to the number one contractor, grew in staff to try and do more work on smaller margins. And then that's when things started I started realising they're going wrong, because we were going up and up in staff. Some months we were making huge money, and the next month we'd lose huge money, and it was this roller coaster. And that's when I really started to feel I'm out of my depth. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. This is not simple like I thought it was when we were making good money. That this is really not going well. And I started just telling people. As you can see, I talk a lot. I'm quite comfortable with vulnerability. I'm quite comfortable telling people my worst fears, secrets, whatever you want to call them. And I just started telling people, shit's hitting the fan, things are going wrong. And my neighbour said to me, "Oh look, have you tried a business coach?" I was like, "What's one of them? What's a business coach?" And I had this moment of, what's a business coach? Well, someone that coaches people in business and understands. Okay, cool. Well, let me speak to him. And I remember this guy coming in, and the first thing he did was say, "Where's your profit and loss? Where's your cash flow forecast? And where's your balance sheet?" And I was like, yeah, I've got my profit and loss. It's in the filing cabinet. Cash flow forecast, what's one of them? Balance sheet. Yeah, I think that's in the filing cabinet. And at that moment, I suddenly realised that I hadn't been doing business in a correct way at all. I had just been building on, the culture and looking after the staff, trying to get more work in, which I was very good at getting more work in, and winning work. I just wasn't very good at the real fundamental foundations of what I call. I've got 4 what I call foundations of a business, and that's numbers, systems, sales and marketing, and culture. And obviously, I was doing culture okay. Didn't have any systems. Doing sales and marketing okay because we were getting work in, but probably not that well really when you look back at it. And then numbers were just completely missing. And the number one for me, foundational pillar of any business, is numbers, and I've learned that now. And another thing Jeff did, my coach, is he said, "Henry, you need to read this book." And I said, "Oh, no, I don't do learning. I failed all my GCSEs. That failed me." He said, "No, Henry, your business is in a bad way now. You need to read this book if you want me to coach you. I can help you, but you need to understand, you need to read." And it was this light bulb moment. I started reading this book. It was called 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. And I suddenly started reading, understanding that I was the guy. Basically, the book, if you know it, is about how to manage people, and how people have monkeys, which is like their problem of the day that they need. And they'll come up to me and say, like, "Henry, can you reverse the chipper in?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, I'll go and reverse the chipper in." And then they go, "There's a reason why you're the boss, because I reverse it in really well." Or they'd say, "Henry, I need this looking at, or I need that looking at." I go, "Yeah, I'll sort that. And I remember people saying to me all the time, "Henry, there's a reason why you're the boss." And I'd be like, "Yeah, there's ego inflated. There's a reason why I'm the boss." Not realising the whole time I was completely disempowering my staff. Yeah. I was just taking their problems and solving them for them, and they weren't solving it themselves. They weren't using YouTube, or they weren't going and reading a manual, or just trying it, failing, as we talk about failing and then working it out, because I was the guy in the cape. So anyway, he gave me this book, and I was reading it, and it's a light bulb moment. And then after that, I suddenly realised that I needed to learn more. And that's when it really opened me up to start going down this rabbit hole of spending lots of time and money on courses, on books. And then that's when things started to change. But the company was already in a bad state, and we couldn't carry it on.
Yeah. So books, it's interesting that you talk about books, because that's something that, again, same as you, never read up until probably about a year and a half ago. And at that time, I should have got shares in Waterstones, because I have got a ridiculous amount of self-development books, business books, marketing books, even like mental health books as well, because you don't realise how much your mental health plays in how successful your business is. It sounds to me you've done something that everyone does, is you get consumed by the business and you start working for the business instead of on the business. And then another thing that Harley from KW Tree Care, if you're not listening to that podcast, money grows on trees or something like that. Really worth it, because he don't know if it's like made a statement or something, but he said something along the lines, and I could be wrong, but you know what I'm like, you know what the podcast is like. You can either be a tree surgeon or you can be a businessman, but it's very hard to do both successfully.
Yes.
What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
definitely. You have to. If you want to be a tree surgeon, then like we were talking about earlier, if your goal is to run a small business which has just got a couple of guys working for you or one guy working for you, then you're going to be a tree surgeon. If you want to have a business that runs for you and you can go off on
Yeah,
holiday for 6 months and it comes back and it's fine, you need to be a businessman, and that's the difference. And it's something quite controversial, but I don't think you've got a business if you can't do that. I think
yeah,
it's just a job that's actually underpaid and overworked, because if you've got a business that you're working in all of the time and you're going out and you're doing the work, you're pricing in the evenings, you're pricing at the weekends, you're doing the invoicing at 11 o'clock at night, you're getting up early in the morning to do the quoting, it's just a job. It is literally just a job, and you're getting, generally at that point, you're getting paid not that much more when you work it all out at the end of it. And if that's what you genuinely want from life, then that's okay. But I don't think that's what most people get into to start their own business. Most people get into business because they want more time, and in the
yeah,
end, they then have less time because they're working around the clock. And I think you're right. For me to create a successful business, I had to come completely off the tools, and even pricing work. I had to really be working, as you say, on the business and constantly working on the fundamentals, which, for me, is the set numbers, sales and marketing, systems and culture, and really getting those right. Yes, there's lots of other things that come into a business like delivery and operations and things, but generally you're already doing that quite well because you're a tree surgeon and you understand that
yeah,
part. It's the real business bits that need to happen, and I think you could still have that even if you had, you don't have to be a big company. You don't have to have 10 teams, 20 teams, 30 teams. I actually think that for me, a good sized tree surgery business is either 3 teams or 6 teams, in my opinion. Like, we've got, in the new business now, we've got 5 teams. We're aspiring to have 6 teams with 2 managers and an office manager. And I always say a surveyor or manager to 3 teams, or two to 3 teams works quite well. Um, and that's enough of a business structure for me now to only need to do 4 hours a week in that business, and I can go away on holiday for 3 months and come back and the business is still running. I have an oversight on the business, but yeah, I think my opinion on that is that you 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 need to be, if you want a business that works for you and you want time back, then you need to be a businessman.
yeah. Because even now, we can pretty much guarantee people download this podcast all hours of the day, and there will be someone right now. It's like 9:15 at night for us, and they are doing invoices, they are writing quotes, when in reality they should be sitting at home, spending time with the family, and not having to do all of this.
Definitely.
I think a lot of people think they have to work 12 hours a day to make the business successful, when in reality the business is making you work 12 hours a day. You're not, those 12 hours aren't going to make you a penny more. But when you start to pull back and you do hire the right people, that's one thing people really struggle about, to go, right, if I hire someone, they've got to be able to replicate everything I do, and then the next person's got to be able to replicate. And instead of just hiring people specifically for those roles to deal with either the HR, the office admin, or to just specifically go out and quoting work, they never realise, including myself, I'll hold my hands up to this, you never realise how much time you spend working. And if you actually work it out down to the T, you are probably paying yourself less than minimum wage. But because you see loads of money in the bank, and because you see your lads working, and people are saying, oh, you've won that job, you've won that, it's like a false sense of being successful.
Well, it is. I had all the kit, all the yard, everything, massive yard kit and everything, and I thought I was successful, and I definitely wasn't. But going back to what you're saying, I think just to give people context listening to this, because I don't want everyone to think that, oh, you've got to go out and employ loads of people to do all your stuff to start off with. Like, there is a chicken and egg thing, and maybe for the first year or two you are going to be in the trenches and have to have long days, but that's okay as long as you've got a goal to go. I know I'm in the trenches right now. I know I'm doing what I call the £10 an hour tasks, which are the invoicing, the quoting, and all these things, and I know I'm doing that. But I'm going to only do that for a year while I get enough cash flow, I get the business off the ground, because in a year's time I'm then going to start employing people, because I've got people on my mastermind, guys on my mastermind that are right at that stage at the moment. It's a bit of a chicken and egg kind of situation. You know, they're still doing that, you know, work in the evenings, which I think's okay as long as you're not going to do that for the next 10 years. You know, you've got to be in a position where you can go, okay, I'm going to do this for a year. I'm going to be in the trenches. It's going to be chaos. I'm going to get this business going. And then it's just being wise with who you employ. You don't have to necessarily go and employ an office person straight away. You can go and use a virtual assistant, which we've got abundance of now. You can use virtual assistants in the Philippines for £3 an hour, which isn't slave labour, by the way. It's actually, spoke to a Philippines VA the other day, and she said if they work a 40-hour week, they're getting paid the same as a doctor, because it's $4 an hour for them. You can use HR consultants. You can use marketing consultants. You know, you don't have to employ all these high-level people. You can just tap into different people's, you know, and use them without having to have a whole team around you. But it's definitely very much needed to run a successful business, is to have more people doing what I call the £10 an hour tasks.
Yeah, that is one of the big misconceptions. You have to have lots of people working for you straight away, or you have to know everything. And again, I can really relate into this podcast, because that's what I did. I went, right, if I'm going to do this, I need to have someone to be able to do this and someone to do this, and they have to work for me full time. Right, what's that going to cost? I've got to make an extra 120 grand a year just to have these people. And then someone would come along and say, well, why don't you just get this consultant in, or why don't you get this in? And it came down to, but what if that person says something to one of my competitors, and then my competitor knows what I'm doing? It's that fear and those misconceptions of going, actually, the consultant aspect of getting people into work when you need them will advance and grow your business far quicker than you having to get someone, bring them in, train to that standard, for them to then turn around to you and say, all right, here's my 2 weeks notice, I'm now leaving. Did you, when SSE changed their contracts multiple times, did you ever find yourself doing a rinse and repeat and expecting a different outcome?
Yeah, well, there's that famous saying by, is it Einstein, doing the same?
I know exactly what it is, but I can't think of
doing,
it, so that's why I said the rinse and repeat.
doing the same thing over and over and again, but expecting different
Yes.
results. And I was that guy. I was the definition of insanity. You know, I was trying to do work on the same contract with the same people, trying to get more out of the staff, trying to get more time on site, you know, more spans cut, more things done, when I should have been. And you know, I think, and actually I know, there's something very powerful about putting the white flag up and saying, I'm not doing this anymore. And that's what I should have done. And if I had the right numbers, and I'd been seeing the numbers, and I'd had all the right information in front of me, I probably would have made it easier to make more of a powerful decision. But I think I wasn't strong enough a person to make that decision. I was a weak person at that point. I'm happy to admit that. I wasn't happy to be it, but I'm happy to admit it, because a strong business owner at that point would have gone, this isn't working, we're laying all the staff off, we're going down to however many we need to cut right back, we're going to get rid of a load of big kit, we're going to get rid of this big yard, and we're going to go smaller. And that's what a really good businessman would have done. And some people might call that ruthless, but those people working for me would have, I felt bad about laying them off.
Yeah.
They would have gone and found another job. They'd have been okay. They would have done. Yes, it would have been sad. And I just don't think I had a strong enough business sense to be able to make that decision. Like I say in my podcast, failure is only a negative if you do not learn from it. And to never give up. But I always put a caveat with that: never give up. You know, it's okay to pivot and go left and right. Giving up is just, laying off all the guys and just folding the business up in that terms.
It's that, like, I've had it where I've not wanted to let people go, but I've had to. But no one ever teaches you, or you're never expected to experience that side of the business of going, well, I've been growing for the last 5 years. Things have gone wrong, but technically, I'm always meant to keep on growing the business. I'm never meant to have a downward spiral, or I'm never meant to lay people off. Everyone who works for me is going to work for me for the next 50 years. I'm going to look after them. I can ask you the question now, why didn't you just go, like, what stopped you from saying, right, we just need to let these 10, 15 people go, things are going to improve? Was it the fact that you just didn't know you had that option, you didn't have the experience or the understanding of things can go backwards but still move forwards?
I didn't. I was always very positive mindset. So I always thought we could just work it out and trade out of it, that I'd work things out, that I'm hardworking,
Yeah.
I'm determined, and I'm positive, so I'll work it out. I was probably pig-headed. I was a bit ignorant to what's going on. I didn't understand insolvency and the fact that you can end a company and start another one. And just to give the listeners context, it's not as easy as that. Just to give you context, there's a lot that goes on, and it's extremely stressful, and it's not easy in any form whatsoever. But I didn't understand what that meant, and insolvency and business and that kind of thing. So I just didn't have the numbers to make the decisions. And I think that's what it really comes down to, is just having the right information in front of me. There's a really good book called Switch by Dan and Chip Heath, and he explains that we've got two parts of our brain that makes up our decisions, and one is our emotional part of our brain, and the other is the thinking part. And if you imagine the the emotional part as an elephant, and the thinking part as a rider, that actually you're always going to make decisions by emotion because your elephant's always going to win, but you need your thinking part, which is the rider, needs to try and influence the direction of your emotional brain. And that's where more and more, giving it more and more real facts, real information, can make the right decisions with your elephant, with the emotional side. But I didn't have the thinking part at that point. I didn't have a rider because I didn't have the right business understanding, the numbers and everything. So I was just making decisions on emotion all the time. And if you're anxious, stressed, and you're emotion, then you're making really bad decisions. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things is that I was positive, drive, determination, and I didn't have the right information to make those decisions, and I probably didn't have the bottle to make those big decisions.
Yeah. I'm gonna just change my next question.
Yeah.
Did you try and hide it from anyone when the business was failing, or was it your mind was overtaken and it was hiding it for you?
So my wife kept saying to me, things aren't right, are they? And I certainly didn't probably tell her the full story. She was also heavily pregnant through the time with my second child, Ned. Actually, when the insolvency practitioner first came in and said the business has got to end, or you've got to trade positively for the next 12 months, I still tried trading because she was about 3 weeks away from giving birth. So I was, the stress, man. There was days when I remember one day I walked through the front door and I just cried my eyes out. I was literally so many things were happening. We had a invoice factoring company, and I knew things were bad, and I was trying to deal with it in my positive. I gave up drinking for a while. I was in the yard every morning at 6 a.m. I was constantly trying to problem solve, trying to work out how to work it out. So yeah, I was definitely not telling my wife the full truth about what's going on, and she was trying to help me, and I wasn't in a position to listen to anybody at that point. I was still quite big-headed.
Yeah. I think if you do face failure within yourself, you do go a bit big-headed. Not big-headed, pig-headed, sorry. Where you just go, they don't know what they're talking about. They're not seeing everything, and it's because you're hiding it. That's why they're not seeing everything. Did any of the lads at the time start whispering behind your back, thinking, "Hang on, Henri's going a little bit off the rails there. This isn't quite working out. Work isn't coming in as much."
Well, the thing is, we always had plenty of work because we had so much work on SSE. They had so much to give us. It just wasn't very good high value work. So, I think a few of the people closer to me in the office, we had at this point we had about 11 people in the office out of 47, and I don't think it was the lads on the ground that saw it, but certainly one thing I know, and this is where I had the culture right in some ways, but I didn't have it systemized so everyone
Yeah.
knew it inside and out. Everyone knew the vision, the mission, and the values of the business. And certainly one thing that was said to me is when you come in and you're in a good mood and things are going well, the whole office is lifted.
Yeah.
When the shit's hitting the fan, everyone can tell because I was the culture. And this is where
Yeah.
I'm not it now in my business now. I was the culture because I brought the positivity, the happiness, everything into the business, and people sort of lived off of that. Henry's in a great mood, so the whole office is in a great mood. Henry's in a shit mood, so the whole office is feeling the pressure. So I think they could see that. Certainly, the office team could see that when the shit was hitting the fan, how stressful it was. When the insolvency practitioner came in, it was like the Grim Reaper coming in. It was the most depressing thing in the world, and I think people could definitely see that. But one thing, even up until the final days, we didn't have that many people leave. People were there till the bitter end because I'd earned the respect of the team and the commitment I'd given them all the time. They gave it back. When I actually laid everyone off, it was one of the most emotional things I've ever done, and there was tears from both sides because we'd had this great company and this great group of guys, and we literally went then from over the 6 months before we'd gone from 47 down to about 35, and then we then had to go down to 9.
Jeez, that's that. Can't imagine it. Never been in that position. Won't try to imagine it. But all I can think, like the times where I've had really good people work for me, and I've said, "Oh, we kind of don't need you anymore." Even I've went, "Oh, I hope I'm going to see him again."
Yeah.
But to have 47 members of staff, and then for the insolvency practitioner to come in, did you feel like an imposter at that time? Like you were, it was all. Did it feel like it was just a dream?
It just felt like I was in this. It felt like it went on forever, when actually it was in life terms. I think it had gone over about a year and a half. That it was really bad, but it felt like every day. By this point I was doing self development, and I was reading these books, and I started implementing all these things. And I remember there's one good book called The Compound Effect, and they talk about momentum, and they call it Big Mo. And I'm like, all right, I'm doing all these things. I'm doing A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
I'm doing what the book's telling me. I'm doing everything. And I remember going to my coach at the time. Where's my momentum? Why is this not happening? And each we met every 2 weeks, and every 2 weeks it just felt like I wasn't getting anywhere, and we were going backwards. I'm thinking I'm doing everything right now, but I don't think I understand imposter syndrome, and I understand it, but I don't think I ever got to that point because I was always quite a positive, confident person. I just certainly felt out of depth and that like I didn't know what I was doing. I've always wanted to be, in my terms, successful and run a successful business or multiple businesses. So I was always determined to push on. So yeah, it was just felt like it went on forever. It really did. It felt like the longest year and a half of my life.
Yeah. Would you say SSE had you basically by the balls for it to be affected? That because that was the main reason
Yeah,
why it started going down. It was great in the glory days where they were paying the day rates, and then they changed it, and then changed it again, and then it just got tougher and tougher to where, because like you said, they absorbed that much of your energy, you being able to focus on the other aspects of the business that needed running.
yeah, they did have us by the balls, but that wasn't their fault. That was my fault. I could blame SSE, and that to the cows go home. I could blame so many different things,
Yeah,
but ultimately it was me that had got in that position. It was me that made the decisions to not lay the guys off. It was me that made the decisions to scale up. It was me that made the decisions to go and subcontract for lesser rates than what we put in. Um, after the business went under, I was in a hole for about 3 months of complete despair, depression. We'd gone over the hump. We'd got the
yeah,
business restarted. Mike Netley, an absolute legend. He worked for me from a groundsman. He's now my commercial manager, and Sophie, my office manager, she's still working with me. They practically ran the new business. We had a couple of guys went and worked for Dave Borer, who is like my father figure in the tree surgery industry. We subbed to him in the early years, and then we didn't do work for him for quite a few years. And then when the business went under, he took two of our teams for about 3 months. So we had two teams out of him and another team working. And I went missing in my head for about 3 or 4 months because all through the build up to the business going under, I was sober, didn't drink anything, I was on point every single day, turning up early, getting stuff done. It was actually after the business went under, and I know we're going a bit sideways on your original question, but I'll get back to the point. That's when it really kicked home. Once we'd restarted and I was over drinking, overeating, really terrible mental health. And one of the reasons why is because I had to hold myself accountable. And I read a book called Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed, and it's all about how failure is the key to success. It talks about the aviation industry, and my old coach had always talked about accountability as well, and I'd not really understand what he meant by accountability, responsibility, and then blaming excuses was the lower end of that. And you want to be accountable. And the reason why I'm saying this is that I could sit here and say, oh, it was SSE, they had me by the balls, they changed the contract, they were terrible, etc., etc. But if I do that, then I'm ignorant to my own, what I actually did wrong, and it wasn't them. Yes, they were a difficult client to work for, but they've got health and safety got to be the highest. They are a massive company that need to have their accident levels low. They need to be doing everything by the book, and you'll find that with all the big companies you work for, highways, Network Rail. They're huge companies, so they have to be a highly I can't think of a word for it, but a high level of health and safety, paperwork, and everything that goes with it. So that wasn't. It was all down to me, and I had to hold myself accountable. I had to stare down the barrel of all the things that I'd done wrong, all the decisions that I'd made wrong. And if I'd have blamed everyone, I'd just be doing the same thing, and I'd be doing that thing. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. If I had just blamed other people, so I had to hold myself accountable, and I had to learn from the failure. And the only way to do that is by writing. I wrote a document what went wrong, everything that went wrong. And I still look at it now to go, am I doing that? And I'm still not doing everything perfectly off that document. I'm certainly not running a perfect business. And I'll never say that you're always improving, always learning. But I know that's a really long answer to your question, but I just wanted to give that some context.
It's a great answer, and it's the key word, accountability. Because I guarantee it right now, someone's just listened to that and went, oh shit, yeah. That's exactly what I need to do.
And do you know what? It was lots of little bad decisions as well. It wasn't one big bad decision. Like they talk about the compound effect. You can make lots of good decisions every day. Spend less, eat less, whatever it is, and your bank balance, your weight will drop or whatever. I was making lots and lots of bad decisions on a regular basis, which then compounded to the big failure. And I think that's something that was huge that I learned.
That's for someone who takes accountability himself and learned the hard way like you. That's a case of wish I met you a couple of years ago because I'd be in a bit of a better place now. But I learned the hard way.
Sometimes it's the only way to learn, because we can't see it.
It's a bitter and tough pill to swallow. Because even now, friends look at me and go, "Well, that person did this and that person did that," but then you've got to say to them, "Yeah, but I instructed that person to do it. So it's me at the end of the day." Just because someone else made, I know people hate me swearing on this podcast, but just because someone else made the fuck up doesn't mean it's all their fault. I told them to go and do it. And it takes a really, I'm like you, I'm struggling for the words. It takes a really, I don't know if bold is the right word to use, but it takes a certain type of person to go. It takes a certain type of person to just hold hands up and say it ends with me. It started with me, it ends with me. I can't put the blame on other people completely.
Well, it attacks your ego, and that's the thing. When you're having to take accountability, we've all got egos. Everyone has an ego, and an ego doesn't have to be massive, or it can be a small ego, but we all do. We all have self-preservation of our own personalities, and if we're constantly blaming ourselves for everything, then that's going to have a detriment to our confidence. So it's kind of like this thing, and I think so that, you sat there saying, I will learn the hard way. I think a lot of people do. My wife was telling me all the time, Henry, do your numbers, do this. No, it'd be fine, it'd be fine, it'd be fine, it'd be fine, it'd be fine. And then I learned the worst way, right? So it's a very deep thing to do, and it's difficult just to go, hold your hands up, because we do want to protect ourselves, and we don't want to constantly be, putting ourselves down. But it is a very powerful thing to be able to hold yourself to account for the things that we do.
How did you manage to get yourself out of the hole? Because before you didn't solvency practice and it was there, so you're really busy. The hump happened, and then it was that lull. How did you manage to get yourself out of that lull?
Well, that was June 2019, and actually that lull went on for 6 months now, looking at it, because it was actually, I had a terrible Christmas. Me and my wife weren't getting on. We had to work out, we had to sell our family home. It wasn't repossessed, but we had 200k's worth of personal debt from personal guarantees, credit cards and personal loans. And the easiest way, we had 200k's worth of equity in our house, so the easiest way was to sell our house. So I spent months living on friends' sofas, living in hotel rooms, because I didn't want to argue in front of their kids. I'd come home for a bit, everything would be okay, and then we'd argue again, and I'd be drinking too much, which would make things worse. And this happened for up until about Christmas. We had an awful Christmas, and because I just wasn't very present, and I just wasn't being a very good human being. And I went, right, things aren't working out. My son by this point was a year old, and I looked back and went, I've barely seen my son for the last year. When Esme was born, we businesses, when we had this day rate contract, got to spend a lot of time with her. I had lots of days off, lots of time off of her. And I bonded with her really well. Ned, first year, barely saw him, and really depressing Christmas. And I went, right, that's it, I've got to quit alcohol. Need to quit alcohol, need to get myself back out there. And I went to quit alcohol for 3 months, just to detox. And I think what we're now 2.5 years on, I've still not drank. And I don't drink at all anymore. And I've drunk most of my life since about 13 years old. And that was the start of me remaking myself. I then started doing networking and turning up to networking events. I'm a confident person. The first networking event I went to, I was shivering like a I don't want to swear, Essie dog. And I was nervous and felt terrible, and went networking, and actually it was great for my confidence. And I then basically sat in an office for the next year, even through COVID, and I did all the sales and marketing in the business and started growing the business, and I was focused on one thing, and that was growing a business and doing it the right way. I did lots of courses, read lots of books, and I completely analysed my performance over the last few years of the business that was running, and I realised that the reason why I quit alcohol is because some of my really poorest decisions I made were on a Monday morning after a heavy weekend. I'm not saying everybody has to be successful needs to quit alcohol, because some people are really good, but I'm an all or nothing person. I'm not the kind of person that goes down the pub for a couple of beers. I'm the kind of person that's still there at 3 a.m, or going to the casino to play poker, or going out till the early hours to a club and then feeling like death for days afterwards. And it's not what made the business go under, but that was just me looking at what I wanted when I restarted was the least path of resistance to be able to get it all back and grow a business. And I knew overeating and over drinking were resistant paths. So I just went about trying to get my mind in the best possible place. And you said it earlier with some of the books you read. I read mindful meditation books. I read so many other things and podcasts and everything, and just went into a massive rabbit hole of self-development and just focused. And actually COVID was the best thing that ever happened to us, because we then went into a position where we could still work. Boris said, if you can't go to work, if you can't work from home, you can go to work. You can do essential ARB work. We were doing highways work and other essential health and safety ARB work. And we just went and worked, and the teams were twice as productive because we won't get stuck in traffic. I was more productive because I could just get on the phones and just be emailing and writing sales and marketing strategies and getting the numbers sorted in the business and doing everything. And yeah, that's where it really started to grow. And we did 2 years of trading, the 2 best years of our lives. You know, so almost the same revenue numbers, but with like half the amount of staff, or you know, so much less staff, and that's how we regrew the business.
Oh, mate, I'm sitting here just listening to you going, just relate. Can just relate far too much to all of this. How did you manage to like rebuild the trust with people who you've worked for, who've worked with you, and then going forward as well, trying to get a new business and stuff?
So, to be honest, most of our clients were fine. We were really worried when the business went under, and most of our clients were like, they were fine with it. You know, we just said things haven't gone quite right. We've had to start another business.
Yeah.
We need to get back on your approved list, and they'd just send us a form, and we'd novate a lot of the stuff across, because essentially it was still me, and people buy from people, and you build trust with clients. Like, you know what you said earlier about, I think you said it, or it might come in a conversation, but people worry about people taking, you know, people that work for me in the past,
Yeah.
people go, oh, if they leave, they're going to take your clients. Well, no, they're not. Quite often, if someone leaves, it's going to take them a long time to build a reputation and relationship with somebody for them to be able to get your client, because people build relationships with people, and obviously we've been running 11 years by that point, so there are a lot of the foundational relationships already there, and just having an honest, you know, one thing I'd say is I live my heart on my sleeve, and being as honest as you can with people, not bullshitting and just saying, look, this is the situation, this is what's happened, but we're still trading and we're going to go again. We'd still really like to work for you. And we didn't have one client that said, no, we don't want to work with you, because they understood that, you know, things happen in life, and that we were still going to deliver the same service and be the same company as before, just with a different name and a different brand.
What was the biggest lesson that you learned from it all?
The biggest lesson, knowing your numbers, knowing your numbers, know your numbers, know them. Like, even now, I'm trying to get more and more granular with my numbers, and I'm always trying to improve. I've got a company metric sheet which has got all the company numbers, everything from staff survey to cash flow to profit and loss to how many audits are done, to looking at the balance sheet, looking at the profit from last year to this year, looking at the amount of quotes you're doing, the marketing numbers, and always trying to improve on that to make those decisions. So I'd say the biggest lesson is knowing your numbers. And there might be some people listening to podcasts and going, well, that's just obvious. But it's not to some people, especially when you've had not done any business theory or anything like that. It wasn't obvious to me at the time. You know, I knew I had money in the bank or I didn't have money in the bank. That's as much as the numbers I knew.
I think that's what it is like for a lot of people at the moment. If the zeros are in the correct place, you're doing good.
Yeah.
If they're in the wrong place, you've got no idea why they're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we'll move on to like the comeback tour, as I've named on my little documents. So you went from one business to, is it 5 you've got now?
So there's four, but I've got more revenue streams than that. So yeah.
Are you? Well, I'd say, because I've got to know you more over the last hour. Are you still worried things could go wrong, or do you have like backup plans now and things in place for you to not make those mistakes?
Still worried things go wrong. You know, things have got really quiet recently in the industry, and we've gone from having the best times over the last 3 years, and the last month it's got really quiet, and I've had to do a lot of work with the team. But now I'm in a position where I've got a sales guy, 2 managers, and an office manager. And before it had been me getting back in the trenches, having to phone everybody. But now I can phone the team or have my weekly one-to-ones with them and go, right, you need to do A, B, C, D. You need to phone these clients. You need to do that. So, and they go and do it, which is great.
Yeah.
And I still will always have a worry about the future. I've got, you know, multiple businesses and revenue streams, But a tree surgery business is generally not a super high cash flowing business. The profit margin is generally around 15 to 18%. And I know there's some companies out there that will be listening going 20, 30, 35%, but generally they're the companies that are still in their business and they've not got managers and they've not got the structure. And if someone has got 30, 40%, then I commend anybody that's doing that sort of net profit. But in a tight, a very tight profit industry, which I would say tree surgery is, you've got to turn over 1 million to make 150 grand. That's a lot of work, a lot of moving parts in the business. So I'm always crunching the numbers and always forecasting and looking to the 3 months ahead and trying to work things out. I don't fear the business will go under again. I just don't want to have too much pressure on the situation, if you know what I mean.
Too much pressure, says the guys now running 4 businesses. So what does a typical day look like now compared to 5-6 years ago?
So now I wake up, I've got a gym in my garage, so I'll go and spend 40 minutes. I don't like the gym at all, but I do it because I have to. I'll go and spend half hour, 45 minutes in the gym before the kids get up. And the kids get up and then I do breakfast and mess around, play football with my lad, and get them ready for school. And then they go off to school at 8:30, and then I go off to work because my non-negotiable thing is spending time with kids in the morning first thing rather than doing it at the end of the day, because anything can happen at the end of the day, plus your head's spinning at the end of the day and you can't be fully present with them. And that's one thing I learned from the business going under, is that your kids are only small for a very minute time, and it's really important to try and be present with them, because before you know it they're going to be telling me to pee off and slamming doors in my face, being teenagers, and that's going to come all too quickly. So I generally spend time with family first, and then I go about my day. And at the moment, because I've got the podcast, I've got the Tree Surgery Mastermind group, I've got a property networking group, a property Airbnb business, another property investing business, the tree surgery business, plus I run a book club for a networking group. I've got my days are completely different every single day, so they're not set. So it's just always me just trying to catch breath to try and get some more content done for the mastermind, or for one of the courses I'm writing, or for the podcast.
All right, absolutely insane. Right, so where's this? What was it, the masterclass called? Where's this idea came from then?
So part of my recovery was going down this self-development sort of rabbit hole, and I then joined a mastermind, and I was like, what's a mastermind? And basically you can do 2 sorts of mentoring coaching. You can either do a one-to-one mentoring, where you just find a business coach or mentor and you have a meeting or a Zoom call with him weekly, fortnightly or monthly, and he'll set you goals and actions and you'll do that. Or you can do what they call one-to-many, which is a mastermind. And I then joined, I've joined in the last about 6 in the last 18 months. I've got a general business one, which there's 5 other business owners. I've been on 2 property ones, because I want to do public keynote speaking on a speaker one. I'm also on a mastermind about masterminds, and people teach you how to run a mastermind and do it properly, so your mentees get the best value from it and you deliver the best service. Because for me, it's about yes, it will make me money, but I want it to be a win-win situation. I want to make money, but I want other people to be able to make money, create a business that works for them, get more time back to be with their families. And the idea of the mastermind is that you are when you're doing a group mentoring session, everybody's learning from each other, not just me. Yes, I've got my experience. I can, someone will come to me, right, I've got this problem, I need an office girl, or I need to take some staff on, what would you do? Will you do that? And they give my thoughts on what they should do. But then everyone else will go around the room and say what their challenge is, and then you'll learn from other people. But what we do in the mastermind is we do everyone that comes on, you do a 90-day planning session. So we work out what your 5-year goal is, what your year goal is. We break that down into a 90-day plan, which then gives you weekly actions. And we do that every 90 days, one-to-one. So everyone gets a 90-day plan, because we all spinning plates. Life happens, and if you're not got a plan, then before you know it, 6 months has gone by, and you're still in the same place as you were 6 months before. Then we do a monthly Zoom call, which is a mastermind where people can talk about their challenges. And also I do a weekly Facebook Live Q&A session where people the mentees send in their questions. I do it live on our private Facebook group, and then people can watch it again. So they don't have to turn up weekly, but they can watch it again. And it can be like, what would you do with this? What would you do on a crane job? How would you do this? How would you do that? And then I just give my answers on a Facebook Live. But the whole point of it is looking back, and we've talked about this on this podcast, is what I would have done in the early days. If I'd have had a mastermind, a mentor then, I guarantee that, and I know I would have done, I'm not saying this will be the same for everyone, I would have got to the place I wanted to get to quicker. I wouldn't have spent 10 years to get to 47 staff. I probably wouldn't have lost my business because I would have been putting in, I teach people how to do the numbers, the sales and marketing, the systemization, and the culture. I'm not saying I'm an expert in everything, and I'm still learning myself, but I can also guide people to the right consultants, trying to guide people to the right places and the right answers for them to basically learn from my mistakes. And I saw into the tree surgery industry, and there isn't anyone doing mentoring like this. Yes, you can go and get a business coach, and my business coach was okay, but he didn't understand tree surgery.
Yeah.
There's lots of business coaches out there. You can get a general business coach. But I thought, I've got 14 years experience. I'm not currently working in my business now. I've got a business that runs without me. I do 3 hours a week in that. Now I want to be able to use that to be able to try and help other people. Yes, I want to make some money. We all do, But if I can make some money and help other people make money and create that win-win scenario, and that's what the mastermind is. It's basically a group mentoring program.
How can people find out about the mastermind? Because there's people now literally going onto Google going, right, how do I spell his last name? No, hang on, right,
Yeah.
what's it called again?
Well, I don't actually have a website for it yet. I'm just in the creation point of that. So the best way to find me is just to go onto Facebook and drop me a message. It's Henri, Henri, and then Ghijben, Ghijben. And there's also a Facebook group which I've started, which is the Tree Surgery Business Owners Facebook group. So that's there for me to share some of my information. I want to share as much value to the world as I can for free. And you can go on there. And also it's there for other business owners to be able to collaborate, build relationships, ask questions, put stuff up. Like on certain other forums, you put stuff up and people get trolled for putting something they might not be comfortable putting out to the world. So it's a Facebook group so people can talk and ask questions without feeling like they're going to get abused for saying something that might not be quite PC.
Yeah.
So they can go on that and find me from there. And I will also be running different webinars and trial masterminds. If anyone wants to try before you buy, I've run a couple of those already. We've so far got 9 people on the mastermind. And just one other thing, I do one-to-one. If people don't want to be on a mastermind, I also do one-to-one coaching. But obviously it's better value for money to do it as a group than one-to-one because that's more expensive. And I'm going to be I'm starting the Tree Surgery Business Academy, which is going to be basically lots of online courses on how to do numbers, how to do sales and marketing, how to use LinkedIn, how to do different things like that. So I'm going to be doing a few courses and things like that, which will be mainly part of the mastermind package that people will get for free, but I might sell them as additional courses in the future.
For everyone wanting to know more, everything will be included in the descriptions and all over our social media pages as well. Henri, it's been a heck of a podcast. I've resonated with a lot of stuff tonight that I didn't think I would, and it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you. Again, anyone who wants to